yeah. This is for the one who ain't never had a love, yeah. This one's for the girl who don't feel like she's enough, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. This one's for the cool kid playing on the school team, crying to himself cause he never had the prom queen. Head full of wants, but they said it's just a pipe dream, yeah. This one's for the kids like me, they ain't never had one day. The ladies always turn their cheek, but they ain't let the fat ones sing. This one's for the kids like me, kept working when they had nothing. When people try to take their dreams, they stuck it to them, please don't change. For the
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Alex Cuesta Show. How's everybody doing out there on this Wednesday, November 20th, 2024, episode number 145? It feels like forever since we've done one of these like interview shows, because it really has been. Our last one was October 29th, right before Halloween. And then I went away for a week to Disney. Dave kind of held up shop doing some of the dailies. And we're going to get back into a rhythm of doing more of the interviews, trying to get them a little more weekly. I'm pumped about this week's. Before we get into all the fun stuff, wherever you're watching, first off, thank you. If you're watching on X, give us that repost and that share. Facebook, share and follow over there. YouTube, smash that like button and subscribe there. And then on Kick, because we are now on Kick as well. Do what you do over there, follow. But overall, I am pumped to be here. I don't want to go through too much of a preamble. Like I said, on the 29th, we had Adam Coleman on, one of our buddies, and we had a really fun time talking about the election, making predictions, and, you know, good enough. It was happy days for me in Disney. I had my birthday on the 8th. Trump got elected on the 5th. So it was overall really good vacation. And I'm pumped because our guest today is someone I was trying to get. I knew the things that he was doing back in like June, July, and we were in touch, and he was supposed to come on like late July, early August, but it was one of those things where he was just moving and shaking everywhere. Um, he did some really important work, and it is safe to say that without the things that this guy did, President Trump wouldn't be in the Oval Office. And it's actually freaking crazy to say that because there's so many people that were involved, but he's incredibly important. I'm going to introduce him, bring him in right now. He is Cliff Maloney. He is the CEO of Citizens Alliance and founder of the Pennsylvania Chase. Cliff, what's going on, man?
Alex, great to be with you, man. We're all enjoying this victory.
Oh my
I was
God.
telling you before the show, you know, I'm trying to catch my breath here. Barely have a voice, but we all deserve to celebrate and spend some time. We got to get back to work soon, but appreciate the show. Appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. And it's in the, one of the things that I want to stress to people, and I've been saying this on X, and I don't think you're going to be the one that takes this type of victory lap, but I'll do it for you because a lot of people, and rightfully so, Scott Pressler gets a ton of credit because he started off just basically going around the nation, registering people on a mission. Once he realized that, because he was a Democrat, and then he was like, wait, no, this is stupid. And he's now changing the ways. And then he shifted the focus because he realized how important Pennsylvania was. But while he was doing that, getting his house, you, Cliff, were already underway figuring out the Pennsylvania Chase. And I want to let you talk about what is the Pennsylvania Chase and why did you even start it?
Yeah, so about a year ago, I was approached by Charlie Kirk and some members of Trump's team that pretty much were like, listen, the Republican National Committee is not prepared to make the changes that we need to adapt. Because what happened was in Pennsylvania, they shifted, and this happened in a lot of swing states. They changed the rules, right, during COVID.
Yep.
And they kind of created this environment where the changes created this situation where you really needed to understand early voting, vote by mail, and pretty much we were just conceding, right? The Republicans were saying, hey, let's just vote on election day. Well, look, I get it. When I grew up, in Pennsylvania, you voted on election day. There was one day of voting. Well, those aren't the rules anymore, right? So you have to adapt to the new rules. It doesn't mean we're here to endorse 50 days of mail-in voting, which is what there is in
Which
Pennsylvania.
they're still counting votes right now in North Carolina and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's wild. And so what happened was they pretty much said to us, listen, because I'm a door knocking guy, right? We have a door knocking team. We operate in certain states. Pretty much after I worked for Rand in 2016, I've been focused on door to door operations because the Democrats always have paid door knockers and
Yep.
volunteer door knockers.
Hmm.
And we as Republicans have volunteer door knockers. So hold on a second. Why don't we match what they're doing?
Yeah.
So anyway, the whole point of the premise of us launching the Pennsylvania Chase was the average Republican statewide gets 20% compared to the Democrats' 80% of mail-in votes. So you go into election day down 60%. And it's like, okay, good luck. Hope you have a great election day. And so we set out with a simple goal. We said, look, how do we raise that from a 20% of the mail-in share for Republicans to 33%?
Yeah.
We modeled it. We said, Trump could potentially win at 25 to 28%.
Yep.
At 30%, he probably wins. At 33%, he wins definitively.
Yeah.
And so we set out a goal that we would knock 500,000 doors.
It's
I'm proud to tell you, we had
How many
120
people?
full timers.
120 full timers.
So 10 Airbnbs housed 120 full timers, September 1 through Election Day. We knocked 510,000 doors. And here's the drum roll moment. We were able to get Trump to 34.5% of the mail-in votes.
And I think people need to realize just how massive of a shift that is from the 2020 and 2022 elections, right? Because 2020 was obviously COVID and mail in was the cash cow of the leftist. And those watching will know that. And that was also, and I think, Donald Trump will admit the man doesn't admit many faults, but I think he will admit that saying, hey, don't early vote, don't mail in 2020 was a mistake because he definitely changed his tune come this election. Were you integral in that part of when you were kind of strategizing like how to do that with telling him like, hey, I can go knock on doors all I want, but I need you nationally and I need your team nationally, encouraging people to go out and do it. So when I'm going to that door saying, hey, register an early vote, they're not going, well, Trump says not to. Who are you?
Yeah. So I'll give you the timeline on this. So when we were asked to launch this and to turn all of our door knocking operation back to my home state of PA and just own this chase effort, there were a couple things I demanded, for lack of a better word. One was I said to Charlie Kirk, I said, we cannot have the RNC or Trump himself come out, right before the election and say, don't vote early, right? Because then all the work we're doing would be for naught. And I give Charlie Kirk credit on this because Charlie worked directly with the president to get him to put out videos, to get him to put out statements continuously, saying whenever or however you can vote, vote. If it means voting by mail, if it means voting early, depending on the rules in your state, vote. So that was number one. Number two was I said, listen, like I can't handle election integrity, right? I don't have the bandwidth. I don't have the money. I don't have the resources.
Yeah.
The RNC needs to do what the DNC does, which is just own the legal warfare that is national elections.
Now, when you got started, was the new leadership involved in the RNC or were you still trying to work with Ronna at this point, Ronna McDaniel?
Yeah. So this is why it's like very funny. Like I'm not saying I wouldn't have done it under Ronna, but Charlie leading the kind of protests at the RNC and getting her out, getting Watley in, Laura Trump in.
Yes.
That was a pivotal moment for this whole cycle, probably for our whole country.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
Because I give them tons of credit because there were like Bucks County, Luzerne County, Erie County, Cambria County. There were tons of little things that if it was 2020 type thinking, we would have waited until November 6th, the day after the election.
And the thing that's crazy too is like you look at this election as opposed to the last ones, the lawyers were ready. Everyone was ready. And the moment something fishy happened, boom, you heard it right away. Like Trump campaign launches this lawsuit, Trump campaign. And I think that helped that too, because obviously the legal system works in a certain way. These judges are up and ready. They know exactly what they need to do. These emergency judges, what they might be called upon. And then you have to have these individuals ready to legally go in right away and say, Judge, we're filing this now. Like, and we were able to get so many quick judgments on like the night of when it came to like, I remember with, I think it was Bucks County with, the voting machines when they were down and they were able to sit there and be like, nope, you're not closing at 7, you're closing at 10. Those 3 extra hours, which were massive. And it became just such a better apparatus. And I really, really hope Lara Trump. I heard the rumor that she might be going down to Florida as a senator to fill in Rubio's spot. I beg of you, Lara. I get it. Being a senator, awesome. Please wait. Please, please don't leave the RNC, because I think we found out too how important leadership at the RNC is. And especially for something like you're doing, um, how important was the having the RNC have your back in this operation?
See, it wasn't even that simple. It was more like in 2020, right? Now, not that I was doing a chase program in 2020, but in 2020 it was all silos, right? Nobody talked to each other, and there was this huge disconnect. Well, 2024 was the opposite, right? We had our group, Citizens Alliance, running the Pennsylvania Chase.
Yep.
You had Scott Pressler, Early Vote Action, Total
Mm-hmm.
Patriot, Charlie Kirk and Tyler Boyer, R.C. Maxwell, Noah Formica. The whole team over at Turning Point was fantastic. You had America First Works, Ashley Hayek, Brooke Rollins, Linda McMahon,
Just
and
great
then
group of people.
immediately Elon Musk comes in, right? So America PAC, which
The richest guy in the world helps.
right, thank God they targeted Pennsylvania. They came over the top.
Yeah.
They helped a lot of us. So we were able to share data with a lot of these groups and kind of refine our data based on targeting. That never happened before, right? So I give, and by the way, I'm not even saying, of course, James Blair, Chris LaCivita, Susie Wiles, everybody in the Trump camp /
There's
RNC.
so many people to thank, right? It's difficult from your end. You don't want to leave anyone out, but it's we'll be here for a 3-hour podcast if it's literally you were going to thank everyone that was integral to the effort, right?
Right. But I just think we were all singing from the same song sheet. And it was an opportunity that, finally we matched the Democrat tactics, which, that's like, people ask me, go ahead.
It's really hard to do. They
I
are
know.
a machine.
And they're serious. I tell
Yeah,
people all the time, you look at Fetterman and Oz, Fetterman spent 8 to 10 million. This is a 2022 Senate race. Fetterman spent 8 to 10 million on ballot chasing.
Yep.
Right. And it's this is a serious component of a winning
100%.
campaign.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a couple people went in, everybody went all in this cycle on our side, which to me is why we won.
And on top of that too, I've grown up basically being a conservative. My dad was a conservative, but never pushed me any sort of way. But just from hanging out with him by osmosis, he had Rush Limbaugh on during lunchtime. So it was I grew up listening to that. And I just remember the combative nature of even conservative media, right? Sometimes they would want to disavow Rush because he would say something or blah, blah, blah. But during this campaign, there was just so much of anyone that had any basically affiliation with the right was kind of, I don't want to say in lockstep, because we're not, because you still had some of yours that would push back against certain things, but for the most part it was a all hands on deck mission. Once Trump became the nominee, everyone just kind of fell in line. You had a few people that didn't, but everyone was all in there going, okay, from whether it was Daily Wire, whether it was The Blaze, whether it was small shows like mine, or bigger podcasts, everyone was kind of okay, we want to highlight what X, Y, and Z are doing, and let's continue to hammer, and let's do this. And the one thing I really felt set us apart is this was significantly more positive than any Republican campaign I've ever seen. This was just a super positive campaign. Now, was there anything from your side or that you knew at the campaign? Was that a mission of the campaign to, after 2020 and stuff and how negative and COVID was, to be the positive campaign and come in with that message?
I think the big difference in 2024 is people realize it's not about these swing voters anymore, right? Trump has, and honestly, it's because of the new rules. You're not really trying to just deliver a message. You're trying to turn out your voters, right? So I always give Charlie credit for this, because when he said it to me the first time, I didn't quite understand it, but it's very prophetic. Charlie Kirk said, we have to turn Trump supporters into Trump voters.
100%.
Because there's so many of these low propensity folks that are just, they're with us. I think I read some statistic in 2020 that 30% of Trump rally goers didn't vote. Right.
They
That's
just went for the experience. They went to experience a rally, but they were okay, I did my part, I guess. We look great. I don't know what that does, right?
But 1 out of 3 people going to an event, I mean, it takes a lot to go to a political rally, right? I mean, you got to really be energized, and you're not registered. So I think that was the task at hand, was not, hey, we have to message this correctly. It's no, we need to turn out our voters. But I think that the messaging from the campaign was superb. But of course it should be. You got a guy who was impeached, a guy that was charged with criminal felonies. They held him liable. They tried to shoot the guy. at a certain point, most Americans were like, if the Uniparty's going after this guy that hard, I think he's our guy.
Now, have you been in contact with people in other states where they want to try and do a model of what you've done? Because I feel like, like you said, the Democrats, they're very serious, and this is in all states. They have a working model, and I even see it here where I am in Poughkeepsie. That it's very difficult to combat. Do you have people like other politicos in other states reaching out to you like, how did you do this? How can we get this going where I am? Because like I said, and, look at New Jersey and even New York, they were both significantly closer, and I think the Democrats wanted them to be. And I think, like you said, if we just go, you don't have to go delve into the deep blue. And I think that's a lot of the problem. Like, it helps, right, if you can get people in there, but getting the people in those red areas to vote is massive, because we found out, like you said, too many Republicans don't vote. And I think that's a huge component of what you were able to do. So have you been in contact with anybody in other states to try and replicate what you did with Pennsylvania, Chase?
Well, my phone is on fire.
Including me, sorry.
No. And I do need to say this formally and publicly on your show. I'm very good about keeping my commitments. And it was like every time we tried to schedule Alex, it was like, oh, hey, Vivek Ramaswamy is going to be in the state at the same time. No, I need to say that. So I apologize. We were grinding.
Here's the bottom line. I understood, because I realized that I was trying to get you in like a tough time. And I was like, and me and my brother were like, oh, it'd be dope if we can get him in the middle of it, right? Because that's cool. But when you're like, hey, I have to fly here to go and secure something, I'm like, you're trying to help Trump win. Like, go. Like, I never, like, my thing is, when it comes to this show, I love all the guests that we have on, but none of you guys owe me anything. So if you guys never come on the show, it's like, cool, I'm still going to support you. You did really good shit there. So it's like, I'm never going to be mad at somebody. And in your situation, I was like, you can either miss that flight and not go meet with Vivek, or not go meet with the potential donor to keep your thing funded, or you can come spend an hour and a half with me and maybe do something. I don't know. Like, I was very much for you, and I was okay with you rescheduling.
Yeah. No, so it's I'm getting people. I talked to a couple activists in Connecticut today, California, New Jersey, New York. There's other people. I was just up in Michigan, actually huddling with some of our top allies up there, awesome. Doing a debrief, kind of looking at the analyses of what worked, what didn't work. So this is just the beginning, right? We are just getting started. I'm not going to reveal details because, like I told you before the show, even I'm, finessing and kind of trying to put together final details for 2025, 2026.
Well, the dust is still settling from this. Like, I know, listen, and I get it. The Democrats have already started, right? So we have to already start, because they start immediately. So it's like, we got to have fun with our victory, but yeah, things have to get in the works already.
So we will definitely be relaunching the PHAs. Just so everyone understands, in Pennsylvania, the mail-in ballot request process resets every year. So only those that request the mail-in ballot get it sent to their house, to be clear. So it's not like in some states where they send a ballot to every voter, right?
Like Washington has like total mail-in.
Washington, Oregon, California. I mean, most of like the Pacific Northwest, that's their setup.
Yeah.
So if the Democrats are doing it, we need to be matching it. And so Shapiro has already said, hey, we're going to be out there and we're going to be, on the ground, and we need to reset. Well, then great. It's time for us to get back in the saddle, time to get the band back together, and time to chase ballots.
Is there anybody in the country more pissed than Shapiro right now that he got passed up for Waltz? And now he's, to me, and this is kind of a tangent, he's one of the most dangerous dudes coming in for 2028, because listen, his politics suck, obviously, right? But you got to admit, when somebody's skilled in terms of being an orator and a politician, and Shapiro is a skilled politician. And I thank my lucky stars that the Kamala campaign was dumb enough to pass him over, because I feel like it's a very different campaign and a very different situation for you and Scott if Shapiro ends up being the second guy on the ballot. So it's like, it's almost great that he was not.
So let me say this on your show, and I'll get ridiculed for years.
That's okay.
I think he was the choice, and I think he turned it down.
You think he has too many aspirations for future to be
I think by me saying that, hear me saying that he is one of the smartest politicians in America. I think he saw the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
And he realized that, if he went in as VP and they lost, right, it's very tough to recover from that.
Yep.
And I think he was offered it and turned it down. Do I think we would have lost Pennsylvania? I don't know. But it would have been extremely difficult compared to Harrison Walz. It just would have been. Shapiro is a champion at doing this. Okay. He presents himself. It's honestly like a Bob Casey. Now, right now, you might say, oh, great. Well, Bob Casey's a loser. But they present themselves as moderates. All of their ads, the things
We
that
have
they
Pat Ryan.
want.
We have Pat Ryan over here. I interviewed Allison Esposito, who ran a great campaign against him, but he's same exact guy, a former military vet, and presents himself as this middle of the run guy. Then he got there and he did Pelosi's bidding and Hakeem Jeffries' bidding when he got into the House.
Right. They get in line when they get there. And that's what I'm saying is Shapiro is very dangerous because he can raise money. He's probably one of the best speaking politicians in America at the moment. And he presents himself as this middle of the road, compromising, get things done guy, but he's a radical progressive.
Absolutely.
So in a weird way, I respect them. I hate to say that. They're definitely going to clip this and use it in one of their ads. But I do believe that he will be the nominee in 28 versus Vance. I think Vance will be a great counter to him. But I do think that he will be the guy, and he will be a tough opponent for us to beat.
I'm pumped for 28 because seeing the writing on the wall, like I think JD Vance now has a very good inside track, right? As long as these next 4 years go as planned and he's as good as he's going to be, he has a good inside track. But you can't forget Ron DeSantis isn't going to go away, and Ron is going to learn from this failed campaign and will probably come back much better. Vivek is certainly going to be in there, and Vivek is really good. And I see Huckabee Sanders also running. She's been a fantastic governor in Arkansas. And she throws her name, and obviously there's going to be others that we might not know of. Maybe one of the Trumps, maybe Don Jr. or Eric may get involved because Don Jr. especially is fantastic. So I feel like there's it's a good setup for 2028 right now for conservatives and Republicans alike. So when you get an operation started in New York, I really want to know, because that's something that I've talked about on this show all the time, that we're not good enough. And I've talked about penetrating into deep blue areas like cities, because like my whole theory with cities is you go knock on their doors once as Republicans, they tell you to go away, right? They don't want to hear you. You come back next year in that next election. Why are you back? What are you doing? No, anything changed? Don't care. Leave me alone. That third or fourth time that you're knocking on their door 3 years in a row, 4 years in a row, and nothing's gotten better, maybe gotten worse, that's when they start to listen. And so like, I would love to be involved in something like that. So maybe like, when you guys are, when something's ironclad here, I certainly want to be in that, because I feel like what you did in Pennsylvania is something I've wanted to do for a real long time.
Yeah, happy to have you involved. If you got a funder that wants to give us $5 million, we'll start tomorrow.
I mean, let me think. I got to look in my safe real quick, see if I can scrounge it up. So why was 500,000 doors the goal? What is the significance of 500K? Because, that sounds like any random number. What was the science behind that?
Yeah, so let's look at 2020. All right, I'm going to get a little wonky here, Alex. Feel free to pull me back if I'm too deep.
I like it. Let's do it.
So Biden got 2 million mail-in votes against Trump. Trump had about 500 and I think it was 90,000. Okay. So it was during the height of COVID. Democrats were able to use the fear of COVID to really, really get people to request these ballots and send them back. And honestly, Republicans don't like when I say this. It was a genius maneuver, right? They used the fear of COVID to just bank all these votes. So 2 million for Biden, let's say 600,000 for Trump. Okay. When we launched this, I was looking at all the numbers and I'm like, do I launch it and say we want to have X amount of mail-in votes for Trump as like a raw number? Yeah. Or do I want to use the reason I landed on the percentage? I've never said this publicly, so this is your exclusive here, Alex.
Hey, I like it.
I said, I don't like the raw number, because let's say we aim for 600,000. So even though because look, everybody said 2020 was a crazy year, outlier. All the mail-ins are going to drop, right? They're going to drop significantly for both parties. So I said, well, let's say we just try to like increase it a little bit. Let's say 600,000. Well, what happens if the Democrats come in at 2.5 million? It's like, okay, well, that didn't make a difference, right? Yeah, so I figured the percentage at least is honest and it's ethical based on like natural tendencies of both parties. Like, okay, we've averaged 20%, and we did the math. So We run a lot of door programs. We've knocked over 8 million doors now. I need to update all my handles because we had 6
Jesus.
million going into the cycle. We've knocked 2 million just this year.
How many
Across.
calluses are on your knuckles?
It's funny you say that because the amount of doors, this cycle, it's funny because a lot of, let me tangent for a second. There's a lot of people that do what I call real work. And then there's people that do sizzle, right? The grifters, or the people that only do the sizzle are the grifters. And like Scott Pressler is a champion of both, right? The dude does real work. He's a warrior. He's out at every gun show, every farmer's market, every like Christian, like he's just there. He's
I'm trying
working
to get like him. He looks like Jesus. I feel like that's the key. You got to have like the pinish straight, nicest looking hair. Like he could be on like a Pantene commercial.
So, but he's so good at the sizzle too, right?
Yeah.
His social media is on fire. He documents all the work that he does.
Yep.
I, for a while, was a guy who did the real work. Like we would do door programs, we'd grind it out, but we didn't really have the like I was failing at documenting it, not just for social media, but for my investors, for the activists, for the elected officials
Which
we're
is
helping.
important. Yeah.
Right. So this cycle, I tried to really knock out both of those. And because of that, this probably sounds a little bad, but because of that, every week we were out chasing ballots with our team, right? Servant leadership. You got to get out there, right? Pound the pavement with the crew. Show them that nothing's beneath you. I can't stand the political consultant class where they're like, oh, I would never knock a door. Well, come on, dude. Like,
Well, you
get
got
with
to
the
do
grassroots.
the Elon Musk approach, right? Like when I get done, I'm going to fly back from that thing and get right on the floor and start working with the guys at Tesla, the guys at SpaceX. Like not being above it is massive.
Right. So that was when we decided on 500,000 doors. It's because when we do door knocking, your typical take rate, okay, a take at the door means somebody answers, it's the voter you want to talk to, and you're able to have a conversation, right? And obviously we track all of that, like all of the responses at the door, that's all captured, and we have that data. And so I said to myself, well, maybe we're able to, if we can keep it current with 2020, I expect some drop off from the Democrats because there's just no way. They don't have that fear anymore, right? They don't have the advantage of COVID to drive up the fear with their voters. So 500,000 was the number because I said, well, if we talk to, 1 out of every 3 people, or sometimes 1 out of every 4, you're talking about having conversations, like more than 100,000 to 150,000 conversations.
That's a lot.
Right. And I said, I think that will have tremendous impact enough. And so if you look at the numbers, 2024 mail-ins, okay, Trump got more than he got during COVID. Harris went down 700,000,
which is insane.
It's really insane.
That is bad on her part too.
Like, to be honest with you, like I was shitting my pants, like looking at the numbers a week before the election, because I'm like, man, if they come in where we thought they might come in, my political career is over, because we would have been like 25 to 28%. It's like, I don't know if we're going to win.
Yeah.
But obviously you can track the requests, you can track the returns. And so things started to look really good about 48 hours out. And I called Pennsylvania like an hour and a half before everybody else.
I saw it. I saw the X post, and I was like, I wanted to celebrate. I want to be really happy, but I'm just like, I think he knows something, but I'm not ready. And I'm sitting there in my pull-out futon at Disney, tracking things on X, like, because I was at Disney for the election, and I was like, listen, either way, whether we start the apocalypse or we start a celebration, I'm going to be in paradise for a little bit, so I'm cool. However, the election turned out for a little.
Well, the cool thing was we have all this data.
Yeah.
Right. So I know, because of all the conversations we had, like I'd see certain counties come in, they'd be at like 60% report. And I'm like, oh, we still have a shit ton of votes that we're going to gain in that county. Right. And so you start, and the big ones we cared about were Philly and all the collar counties, and Allegheny County, because those are the Dem strongholds.
Yeah.
Well, Allegheny County was in by like, I think 9:30. They were 100% reported.
Unheard of.
Right. Which was great for us. I'm like, we're up 15% from where we were 4 years ago in Allegheny. Yeah. This is great. Like, it's over. But then I was lucky enough, I was on Charlie's show the night of the election. Yeah. Georgia came in, North Carolina came in, and we were blessed that when Pennsylvania came in, boom, we're at 270. That's the White House.
It was poaching. And like I said, not in the least weird way possible. When Pennsylvania came in, I thought of you, because I'm like, man, he has got to be one of between him, Scott, and your whole crew. Like, the 1,000-pound weights that you guys were carrying around that night had to just drop, and just like,
What was funny was I was on Charlie's show and I'm like sitting in our office. We have a small, shitty headquarters in Harrisburg. And I say that because we want as much of our money to go towards actual voter contact, right?
Hmm.
So I'm in our headquarters and there's a door, like we have like the office door is closed because I'm on the live stream and I have a
Yep.
couple staff in there, they're all researching, reporting numbers, sliding me notes. Like, I'm almost like like an announcer for a sports event. And they're like handing me things, hey, this is interesting. This just hit. Look at Center County, look at Luzerne. And then Justin Grice, my COO, my right-hand man, my business partner, he bursts in the door with like 10 people behind him. He's like, Fox News called it for Trump and PA. And I'm just like, and I interrupt Charlie and I'm just like, yo, that's it. We've got the White House, Fox News call. And they were like lagging a little bit, right? And they're like, what? And I'm like I could not say because there's so much noise coming in the room, and they're all like smoking cigars, which we're not allowed to smoke. The building, like, don't tell my landlord. I probably shouldn't say this publicly. Like, they're all puffing on cigars.
You guys were smoking virtual cigars. It was
Right.
virtual via a VR headset that you got everyone in case of the victory.
Right. That's exactly right.
So I just want to bring in one of our, our super fan, Nate G, comes in, says they named the county after Bill Cower. Did they name a county in there after Bill Cower?
Which county?
I don't know.
Oh, no, I said Collar County. Sorry, that's my Philly accent. I get right to the vowels. You know about this.
Oh,
So,
listen, I do. I'm a Jersey boy, so I know all my South Jersey friends sound like Philly people.
so when I say collar counties, okay, I should put collar counties. Philadelphia County, then you have Montgomery County, Chester County, Delaware County, and Bucks County, right? So those have become like the blue strongholds because of because the city is kind of pressed out.
Yep.
Now I'm from Delaware County,
Yep.
and I tell people this all the time. Like, it's actually pretty embarrassing because Delco, there's 67 counties in Pennsylvania. Okay, 66 out of the 67. If you look at 2020 to 2024. Republicans out-registered. This is all Scott Pressler. Republicans out-registered Democrats in 66 of the 67 counties. The one they didn't was Delco, which is very disappointing.
And which is crazy too, because you think about it, like between Pittsburgh and Philly, that is a massive blue stronghold, right? Like those two are really big because you have a lot of the union guys over in Pitt, which drives me crazy. How the unions, because I'm a former union guy, I got out because of COVID, but books still open, can still go back. But it drives me nuts just how they brainwash some of these union guys. And then Philly is Philly, but and I don't think people realize just how massive PA is. Try to drive from east to west. It takes forever. I remember I did a visit where I'm from, right by the shore in Jersey. That's where I grew up.
Where
And
about?
Manchester, it's right by Tom's River,
Yeah.
Jackson area. So I went to go visit a school over in Ohio, Tiffin, and I had to go all the way through and get up through Pittsburgh and stuff like that. And me and my dad were sitting there and we're driving, and Pennsylvania, like once you get past the eastern part, it's just God's country up until you get to Pittsburgh. Like
Right.
there is nothing basically, and it's gorgeous. But we're driving, and my dad's like, do you feel like you're in one of those like cartoons from like Bugs Bunny where you just see the same scene over and over? But it is a beautiful state, but it is massive. So what was that like too, trying to cover so much ground? Like what was the strategy there? Because obviously it wasn't like fan out and figure it out. Like you had to have a strategy. So what was your strategy with that?
Yeah. Well, when we launched and we said, hey, we're going to knock 500,000 doors, all the statewides loved us. McCormick, Trump, Garrity, DeFore, Dave Sunday, our attorney general now, because every door we knocked on, as long as it's in Pennsylvania, benefited them.
Yep,
right. So they didn't care where. So I had kind of free reign to target certain areas. So we targeted 3 congressional districts that were the biggest competition. Okay. 7 and 8, which are like northeastern PA, and District 10, which is central PA. Scott Perry, my favorite guy. He's a former Freedom Caucus chairman.
Yep.
The Dems spent tens of millions of dollars to try to take him out. I mean, just wild. And I'm happy to report, I mean, so much so we had 3 houses in Scott Perry's district out of our 10 houses. Like that's how much I was like, we got to get this guy back.
Awesome.
We won all 3 of those. So we flipped 2 Democrat congressional districts and we protected Scott Perry. It was a narrow race. I mean, he won by, a point, maybe less than that.
Crazy that Scott Perry's not landsliding whoever the hell is there. Because Scott, you want to talk like, listen, I do not trust child politicians. I don't care who they are. Until I actually get to know you. And I know, like, for me, politicians are difficult to trust. That's how I was raised. You're raised not to trust them. Now, like, for some reason, we're supposed to trust all of them. But, you know, but there's some that you could just look at their voting records. You could look at the things they're saying. Their voting records back up what they say on the floor, right? Scott Perry's one of those guys that you could see what he says on the floor, what he does in committee, his records, they all, align. So I'm happy. And that is such, you talk about your political career potentially being over. This has to now really flip and make your political career go even further, because now you may have a magic sauce here, right? It's really hard to successfully accomplish what you target in politics because the competition is equal, right? Like the fierceness and of the other side is always equal or greater. So it's like that's really cool. So one thing I do want to ask you is, when you have a percentage in
Mhm.
your head, right? How many of those doors that you knock on and those people that you talk to, um do you get to come out, right? Because obviously not everyone you talk to is going to go vote. Some of them are going to say, yeah, sure. And then they don't, right? So how would you have a percentage that you know of that after you talk to them, the likelihood of them coming out is?
Yeah. So here's how I look at it. Okay. One, we won't have the data until December 23rd for election day, but we have all the data for anybody that voted by mail up until 3 p.m. on election day. So we're missing 5 hours of reported data. So we'll get all that. We'll analyze it. We'll put it out. But our process was simple. Okay. We took the Democrats' playbook. By the way, I'm not like some strategist genius. I looked at what the Democrats did in 2020 and I said, shit, we ought to do that. Right. We just took their exact plan and said, let's use it. And so what I tried to do was, we had a 7 to 10 day rotation. So September 16th, roughly, all the ballots went out. Depending on the county, it was delayed in certain areas. So what we would do is we would go to a door and we'd say, hey, Bob, we know you're a Republican. You've got a mail-in ballot sitting there on your table.
Yep.
Will you commit to sending that in today? Okay. And Bob would say, oh, sure. Yeah, oh, yeah, I love Trump. That's great. Yeah. So we would go back, and you can look. This is the best part. The Democrats are geniuses. You can track who has sent their ballot back. Now you don't know who they voted for, right? Obviously, it's a secret ballot.
Yep.
We can look and see if Bob sent his ballot in. And if he didn't, the same door knocker in their walk book, we'd assign them. They'd go back 7 days later. So for certain people, we knocked on their door. I mean, I'm not
That's a
proud to say this, but
pressure
certain
campaign.
people, right? Certain people, we knocked on their door 4 or 5 times. Right? It's like, yo, like, where's your ballot?
But you know what though? I think for that person, as like someone might listen to this and go, well, that's annoying, that's intrusive. But that shows that you guys give a shit. And to that person, when they eventually send it in, maybe next time they'll sit there and go, you know what, let me just get it in. Let me just, before these people come knocking on my door, and obviously they care and they're passionate, let me just figure it out. So that's
Yeah, and we
awesome.
call it, the Democrats use this term. They call it annoying the voter. I don't really like that. It kind of sounds negative. We call it a reminder campaign, right?
Yeah.
That's all you're doing. You're just reminding people, hey, listen, we're here to remind you. You have a ballot. Can you send it back? And so in 2020, this statistic is another reason I launched the program, because this was wild to me. We lost Pennsylvania to Biden by 80,000 votes. Okay. 141,000 Republicans requested a mail in ballot
Yep.
and never voted. Not only did they not send it back, they didn't vote on election day.
Oh,
So it's like, but I don't blame them. Nobody targeted them, right?
yeah.
Nobody reached out and was like, hey, dude, make sure you get your vote in. So,
Yeah.
hey, I'm going to take a quick break. I'll be right back, but you keep it
Yep.
going.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just want to stress to everyone as you're watching this, depending wherever you are, whether you're in PA or in another state, you don't have to be a politico to get something like this done. Now, obviously, we talked on the show not too long ago, I think last night with David. Elon Musk has his America First pack. I think it's one of them, the American pack. And he said that if there is a primary necessary, he will find the money. So if you're somebody that either can primary a bad candidate or knows how to figure that out, um, go do it. And also reach out to Cliff. Cliff is real accessible. Like, I'm gonna throw his name up here again on X. If you just go follow him at Maloney on X, um, you message him, he'll get back to you, because this is something that he's passionate about. And get out there and go start a campaign, or go be involved in a campaign, or pressure somebody you know that has the ability to organize, to get people involved, because this is an operation that we should have in all 50 states. It shouldn't just be in swing states. It shouldn't just be certain people. We can't rely on just Cliff Maloney. We can't rely on just Scott Pressler or the national presence of Charlie Kirk or things like that. We really need to be able to take it into our own hands as well, to be able to do these things. And while Cliff has done great things, and Cliff will probably say this as well, he wants to see the Wisconsin chase. He wants to see the North Dakota chase. He wants to see the Texas chase. He wants to see all of these things popping up. And I was just saying, what you did here should be a 50 state thing every single year for the Republican Party. Now, I really think in the heart of hearts that RNC should have you and Scott on the payroll organizing these things around the country.
Well,
Because I think that's
let
important.
me rain on that parade a little bit, okay? We should do what the Democrats do, right? They have a model that works. So, like, people ask me all the time, well, how did you get the money? The RNC or Trump campaign? No, but that's not how the Democrats operate, right? We're a 501c4.
Mhm.
So we have we don't have tax deductibility, but we have anonymous giving. It's unlimited. Whereas these campaigns, they all have certain restrictions, right? George Soros understood this. This isn't some conspiracy theory, right? The guy's giving billions of dollars to Democrat political operatives, and they're running these programs.
Mhm.
So I'm not saying, I don't want to be on their payroll. What I'm saying is we need to do what they do, which is you get the donor class together, right? And look, me and Charlie are working on this, right? Me and Scott are working on this. You get the donor class together and you say, listen, signal to donors or direct donors compliantly to give to these organizations that are actually doing the work, and have everything kind of delegated out, right? The left is really good at this. The problem they had is Biden's people and Harris, when everything turned over to Harris, it was kind of a godsend to us because their whole entire ground game became just kind of like this astroturfed BS.
Yeah,
Right?
totally.
I did Bannon's show War Room on election day.
Yep.
And Bannon played a clip of one of the Democrat operatives kind of just like calling out, and we dealt with this the whole time. I did. New York Times coming after me. CNN did a hit piece on the PHAs. And it's like, you know what? Maybe it means, we're over the target.
Yeah, absolutely. If they're doing it, yep.
But it was so funny. Like, this guy is just ranting that, I was in Philadelphia and I've been in some of these areas and the Democrats are just dominating on the ground. I'm like, okay, dude. Like, I'm looking at the daily reports. I know where we are. I know what we're doing. And at the end of the day, if you just want to yap, that's fine. But scoreboard, like, let's look at the results. And then they came in. It's like, okay.
So if I'm someone in another state, I'm watching right now and I'm seeing what you're saying, and I'm like, I want to do this, but I don't even know how to start. What would I do if I wanted to get, like, I'm in New York, if I want to get New York Chase going?
So
what would I do?
this is what I would tell people, okay? The strategy is not some secret. The strategy is not some brainchild that like, I could tell you the plan in 10 minutes, okay? The problem is, and anybody can email me, cliff@phas.com. Shoot me an email right now. I'm happy. I'm not a guy that charges for my time.
Hey,
Would
I
love
said
to help.
too, I'm like, go follow you on X. Like, you're really easy to get in touch with. Like, it's not hard.
Yeah, we're an open book here, right? I mean, we've got a country to save. So I'm happy to offer any advice, whatever. The number one challenge, okay, there's tons of great ideas. There's tons of great programs, tons of great organizations.
Mhm.
Number one challenge is funding.
Yeah.
And so I'm not telling people not to do it, but look, let me give you an example, okay? If I was who I am and I launched the PHAs and then the Republicans didn't give me money and Trump's campaign didn't give me money, I'm not bragging when I say this, but 95% of people have said, see, nobody wants to fund it, and they would have went home. What I did was I spent 300 days on the road. I raised $3 million from low dollar, mid-level, and high dollar donors by doing meetings, pounding the pavement, and leveraging my way into any meeting I could get to raise it. And so anybody out there that wants to do this in their state, I will partner with you. I will hand over all of our resources. I'll show you our playbook. But you or somebody else that you assign is going to have to be dedicated day in and day out to raising the funds, because that's the tough part, right? We all can talk strategy. We all can talk ideas. You need to be able to pay your people. You got to pay for their housing. You got to pay for their gas cards. Listen, I didn't just have 120 full-time ballot chasers. I had my COO. I had 2 other people on my fundraising team. We had a team leader in each of our 10 houses. right? That's another 10 staff members I don't even talk about,
Yeah.
right? So all this it's real money. I can show you the playbook, but people have to do the hard work. And raising money is a pain in the ass. It's not easy,
It's
right?
annoying too because and I think it's hard because you have to, I think, get used to asking for it, right? Because that's got to be awkward at first. You have a cause, you believe in your cause, it's the right cause, but you're still walking up to somebody and saying, "Hey, I need you to trust that I'm good enough for you to hand me that check of $250,000, whatever it is, to some of these big people." And now you're taking that amount of money and you need to turn it into something. And if you can't continue to get that money, now that donor is going to look around and say, "I wasted my time on you." So it adds to pressure. And I just don't think there's a lot of people like that want to handle that, right? They want to be able to do the ground game. That's fine. They want to knock on doors, but they don't want to have the pressure of being the face that donor sees. Like everyone knows, like I entrusted Cliff with X amount of money and now they got investment on return because you won. But even if you had lost, they saw your numbers, right? Like it would suck, but you produced, you got numbers out there.
Well, and one thing I've learned in the political arena that the establishment consultants hate me for is be honest, be
Yeah.
transparent, right? When we launched, I could have just said, "Hey, we're going to knock 500,000 doors," but I didn't. I said, "We're going to knock 500,000 doors, and our aim is to get Trump to 33% of the mail-ins." Now, the reason
Mhm.
that's important is because a lot of entrepreneurs, people with wealth, they actually respect and like measurable goals,
Yeah.
right? But what's dangerous about that is, once again, you can be held accountable in the wrong way,
Yeah.
right? And so I tell a lot of people, look, it's easy to have an idea, but let me say this directly into the camera. Like if you're somebody who really wants to flip your state and to move it in the right direction, and you really think that this Chase program would be effective. Now, some states it doesn't make sense to do a Chase
Mhm.
because in New Hampshire, there's one day of voting,
Yep.
right? So we do a lot of work up there, but a lot of our doors that we knock are just advocacy.
Yeah.
So to the camera, I'll say this. If you really want to do this, it's not going to be easy, right? It's simple. The process and the playbook are simple, but you're going to have to grind it out. You're going to have to do a bunch of cold outreach to try to set meetings with donors. You're going to be on planes. You're going to be on trains. You're going to be sitting in bus stations trying to figure out how you get to that next meeting. You're going to have people come after you criminally. They're going to come after you civilly. You're going to have every election commission in America. I've probably had over 12 to 15 different people try to destroy me. I've beat all of them,
Yeah.
right? Luckily, fortunately, God bless that things have worked out for me.
Yeah.
But you put a target on your back because a lot of what you're doing, you have to understand, you're going after the powers that be. You
Uh-huh.
are challenging the status quo. It's a righteous thing to do. But do you have the stomach for that? Right? Do a lot of people really want to spend the time doing that? Or do they just want to sit on Twitter and talk about how, oh, this isn't working or this isn't great? And there's a lot of people that I call it, they yell online. But do you want to do the real work to make a difference? I'm not calling you out, Alex.
And the thing is too, like I also notice, like if you undertake these things, you have to understand that there's a real great chance of failure as well. And you have to be willing to accept it, right? Like you don't want it, but you have to know it's a real possibility that you can work your ass off. You can put together a great operation. Look at the Democrats, right? Their operation is always pretty damn good. And they failed this time because you beat them at their game. And so it's not always going to be. And you know what? You can go and run the same exact, a better operation 2 years from now in the midterms. And politics are weird. It could not turn your favor, right? It doesn't mean that you did anything necessarily wrong or different, but that's a part of the game. And I think that's also something that is difficult for people to come around to. I don't care who you are. Like the fact that you may fail and you could fail in a big way is terrifying. And I know, like you said, you were shitting bricks a little bit early, like coming up to the election, because yes, you worked your ass off. Yes, you thought you reached the goal. You thought you got to where you knocked on your 500K. Like you guys did your part. But again, the chips need to fall where they fell. And this time it did. And I'm happy that it did because I think you're someone that we need in this game. And people like you who have the balls to go out and do that, who are, okay with having that target because, like you said, you're out there too. And, I got a family. You also need to think that if you have a family, is your family dynamic strong enough for you to be gone? A lot. Do you have that? Because that's tough on a family. It's a strain as well.
It's the same speech I give to anybody that wants to run for office. I'm like, listen, what you think it will be versus what it is, like you need to be mentally prepared, right? We do candidate training academies. It's one of the big things we do.
That's awesome.
We're actually, I don't, obviously everybody knows me from Pennsylvania because that's been our national effort this cycle, right?
Mhm.
But Citizens Alliance is actually active in New Hampshire, Idaho, North Dakota, and Pennsylvania.
Nice.
And it just so happened that we did this Pennsylvania program because we saw a gaping hole that needed to be filled and we knocked doors. So it kind of all was perfect alignment. But we do these candidate training academies. I try to do them at least twice per year in our 4 states. And we invite people from all over and we teach them actually how to run for state office. But
Awesome.
the most impactful thing I do there is really explain to them, listen, even if you think you have nothing in your closet, even if you're a Christian, with a perfect, clean, squeaky clean resume, the articles are already written. The ads are already written. Okay.
Yep.
The left, or maybe even the rhino establishment, they're going to come after you. And so I always tell people, like, yes, I would encourage you to get in the fight, but you need to be prepared.
Yes.
You need to be ready for what these goons are going to do to you, because a lot of people, they're weak, and you get in thinking like, oh, I just want to, advance liberty, or I want to talk about this issue and I want to advocate and I want to get real solutions. Well, you have to go up against the beast to be able to do that. And so I always try to prepare people for that. And it's not just, running programs like PHAs, it's running for office. And I always tell people, like, there's a group, FACL, Foundation for Applied Conservative Leadership, and they teach confrontational politics. And they talk about all these cool things. One of the things they talk about is what motivates politicians. And so let me put you on the spot here, Alex. There's 3 things that motivate politicians. Now, a lot of people, I'm sure some of your answers will play into this, but if I said that to you, how would you respond? What are 3 things that motivate a politician?
I'd say first is they have an ideal. I think a
Nope.
lot of them come in as idealists. No,
Nope. I'm going to be rude here. I'm purposely being an asshole.
No, that's fine.
Keep throwing out options. What
about-
motivates What motivates Chuck Schumer?
money, power, dominance.
These are all correct, but they're not one of the 3. What leads to money and power?
Corruption. Immense
All right,
amounts.
I'll get to it. So number 1 is they care about getting elected.
Okay.
Okay, that's how they get their money. That's how they get their power. That's their legacy. Number 2 is they care about getting reelected. That's how they keep their money, their power, and their legacy, right?
Mhm.
Number 3 is they care about getting elected to higher office. That gives them more power, money, and legacy, right? So we say that as a joke, but man, when I was first taught that, it really opened my eyes to why politicians act the way they do. Even our champions, right? And that's fine. Like it's the incentive of a politician to get elected, reelected, and elected to higher office.
Yeah.
That's what motivates them. When you understand that, man, you can do some powerful things.
Yeah.
Right. You can really change the environment by getting them to feel like, wow, if I don't do X, I'm not going to get elected. If I don't do Y, I'm not going to get reelected.
Mhm.
It's why I think Matt Gaetz will be the next attorney general, because all of these senators care about getting reelected and elected to higher office. So do they want to pick a battle with the America First movement? I don't think so.
And
John Thune is probably the biggest wild card right now. John Thune could go down in history as one of the most impactful Senate majority leaders in American, like the whole timeline of our country. You have Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy trying to do this Department of Government Efficiency. And John Thune is going to be somebody that either blocks it or enables it. And all of my instincts tell me he's going to be a blocker. But sometimes these politicians are so motivated by those 3 things that he might have a realization. Stand up against the crony lobbyist, stand up against the uniparty, stand with we the people, and his legacy will be completely changed. He might go down as the most America First Senate majority leader in history. I hope that's the case, but we'll see where it goes.
I'm hoping that in the Senate that Mike Lee and Rand are doing yeoman's work and trying to talk to him as much as they possibly can, because, and on top of that, I have said, I hope that this is Mike Lee's last times in the Senate, because I hope that when one of the justices retires, that Mike Lee becomes a Supreme Court justice.
Right.
I feel like he would be incredible there. But it's been a fun ride to watch what's going on right now and all the stuff. And the Doge thing is going to be amazing. And I don't know how you can block that if you're John Thune. I feel like public pressure and public sentiment is going to prevent that from being blocked, even though they obviously don't care about what we say, but sometimes they do. So overall, uh, I'm optimistically excited for what they do. And, in terms of you saying like, the targets and stuff like that and people with politicians and this, when me and my brother started doing this show, we initially started, and it was kind of like a whatever a show. And then we interviewed a few people. And I remember I got Billboard Chris. I messaged him and he messaged me back and saying he would do the show. And at this point, me and my brother are both, we've already been on the right for a long time. We knew it. We talked about our politics. But I said to him flat out, I go, and our show still isn't massive, but I said, once we have him on this show, we could be as small or as big as we want. The people that want to know who we are now going to know who we are. We're on a list officially the moment we have a guy like Billboard Chris on because of just how much of a disruptor he is. And he's like, yeah. And since then, we've just not given a shit. And it's just, and and the thing is, like, we are willing to, if there are skeletons, we'll take them on. If there are arrows, we will take them and, figure it out as it comes. And I can imagine you will probably be able to speak to this. You don't know how you're actually going to respond until that moment's put on top of you, until that pressure. Cause I've never felt it. I could talk about, I'll handle it. But then when they're sitting there and they're actually breathing down your throat, what do you do? And I feel like that is just a tough moment to even imagine. So I'll ask you, what was it like the first time that you really felt that kind of pressure getting put on you where they're suing you, going to try and expose you, blah, 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 whatever they're going to do?
It's when you understand the why, and as long as you have deep conviction of the purpose or the rationale you made to get involved,
Yeah.
You just have to expect it. I just tell a lot of people that, like, Trump being attacked the way he has been with the legal system, the lawfare, it has made things a lot easier. 10 years ago, if they would have came after me the way they did, both criminally, civilly, all these Federal Election Commission complaints.
So crazy.
I always tell people there's two options you have. And you might not feel that way. A good friend of mine is dealing with a huge legal thing right now. And I was talking to him yesterday. And I said, look, there's two options. Even though a lot of people are going to tell you there's the third option, like in the middle, there isn't. Either one, you get in the fetal position in the corner of the room and you cry, right? And you give up and you're done. Or two, you fight like hell. And you just continue on business as usual.
Yep.
And that has been the not strategy, but like, if you're
mentality.
a fighter, right. If you're a fighter and it's like, look, you want to produce, you want to do good things. And, we hire 1,000 people a year, right? I'm so blessed to be able to say that, man. The opportunities we create for people.
And thank you for hiring that many people, right? You're one of the people that a small business owner that keeps a lot of things going.
Yeah. And I just think that, like, if you're not aligned on why you're doing it, it can be difficult. But for me, it's like, I got my start working for Ron Paul, one of the most ostracized,
yeah,
right? Just like, just unique. I mean, when I worked for him in Congress, legitimately lobbyists would walk past the office. Oh, don't even waste your time at Ron Paul's office, right? It was a totally different experience. But I just realized early on the power of consistency, the power of principle. And if you just stay at it, man, at the end of the day, you can rest your head and know you're fighting for what you believe in. The amount of people that try to buy us off, the amount of people that try to get me out of politics, at a certain point, you almost respect it, right? You're like, okay, I get what you're trying to do.
And that's kind of a compliment, right? That's a sign of respect in a way that it's like you are a worthy adversary that we are willing to try and get you out of here.
Oh yeah. Oh no. I mean, so Florida, we were contracted to do, I'm a big free market guy. And so in Florida, we were contracted to do some signature gathering. This is a couple years ago for legalizing gambling. And I've never had this happen before. So the Indian reservation casinos got a hold of us through our attorney and pretty much said, we will pay you $100,000 to stop getting signatures. And me and my business partner like, what? Right. And like, we had never dealt with this. Apparently this is a normal thing, right? But it's a $1 billion industry.
Yeah.
So if there's 10 firms and you pay them all $100,000, that's $1 million, but it's $1 billion you're blocking, you're protecting your monopoly.
Yep.
Like that's the type of stuff you run into, and in a weird way, Alex, I always say to folks, when you've had people come after you and call you a monster and get all the headlines written and just try to really destroy you, when you beat it all, it's almost the most freeing thing in the world, because now when like Republican establishment consultants or Democrat, monsters come after me
Yeah.
and they're like, well, we really don't want to get our journalist friends involved. I'm like, dude, they've already called me a
Go for it.
horrific
Yeah.
person.
Please.
I
Please
don't
do.
care. Right. Triple down. CNN like going after us, the PA chasers in Erie County. I'm like, more power to you. I raised like $50,000 off CNN coming after me. Thank you. I wish you guys would do that daily. I wouldn't have to fundraise so hard.
Hey, come take a walk with me, and hey, while you're here, knock on that door, please. Like, put them to work. Like, while you're here, there's 3 of you, camera. All you can go do though. Here, take the list. Go help us. Like, make
Right.
yourselves useful at this point.
Exactly right.
So one of the things I want to shift to, and I think was important. I'm happy that you wanted to talk about this. The libertarians that came out in support of Trump, people like, I think a real impactful one was Dave Smith, Clint Russell, even Luke Rudowski, like a lot of these influential people on like the podcast spacing and things like that, that initially were like, oh, hell no, not voting for Trump. He has too many things going on, the foreign policy stuff. And then it came to a point where each and every single one of them were like, we have no choice. Um, what do you see as the turning point for the libertarians? Was it Trump going to the libertarian conference? Was it him being shot? Was it Chase Oliver being one of the worst presidential candidates in libertarian history? What was the turning point in your eyes?
I think it's a culmination of everything. Okay, Clint Russell, Dave Smith, Luke. These are all guys I look up to, right? I mean, I really, really appreciate their commentary. I think Dave Smith on Joe Rogan has done more for the libertarian movement than the Libertarian Party has times 10, right? Just getting our ideas out there. I always tell people, because I get asked a lot, people are like, Cliff, you're this Ron Paul libertarian. How did you end up running the ballot chase operation for Donald J. Trump? And I tell people, I say, look, they tried to get us to believe that it was okay to chop off the private parts of our kids. Okay. Yeah. The Democrats are now the institutional party, right? They are the ones weaponizing government. They are the ones, backing this military industrial complex.
Yeah.
I mean, anti-war left doesn't really exist. And then when you see Bobby Kennedy, Tulsi Gabbard, Elon Musk, Dr. Phil, you see all these people kind of creating, I call it the independent thinking coalition.
Even Donald Trump is still a Clinton Democrat in a lot of ways.
Right. And so I just think we all kind of came to the same conclusion, which was this is we the people versus the uniparty.
Yeah.
This is the working class of America versus the DC corrupt swamp. Like if there was ever a time that people should come around and vote and decide, hey, lesser of two evils, the old libertarian argument, like it wasn't even an argument this cycle. Like, of course we have to. And look, I am the most excited about the Trump administration. I'm 33 years old. Okay. There are probably never in my lifetime, but certainly probably in the last 100 years, there's never been somebody that comes into office with a chip on his shoulder, aimed is cannon is aimed directly at the entire deep state. Like if you're a libertarian, get with it.
Quite literally your wet dream. Like,
right.
It's like, and there's like, and the libertarians for me, like I call them like the fakest real party of all time, right? Because they are like, it is a party, but at the same time, it's like you have so many different, they're serious libertarians in my eyes. And then there's just the libertarians that like the fact that you want to legalize free shit that's illegal right now. Like there's right. Like, and we've saw that with the caucuses, as well, the convention, you saw both of those. And I think the rise of the Mises caucus has been massive because you kind of see a little more of the serious side of libertarianism where, and that like, I talk to some libertarians and I'm like, there is a natural bedfellow with a true conservative, not your uniparty conservative, but a true conservative. Well, yes, we disagree on some foreign policy. We disagree, in terms of intervention. There's some domestic stuff we might not align, but we both believe in the Constitution. We both believe in the Bill of Rights. We both believe in the liberties that Americans have and a smaller government. So we could start on those foundations. There's no reason why libertarians and conservatives shouldn't be in lockstep in most things. And then in our disagreements, let the better person win there, right? In that debate. So I think the Mises Caucus has been absolutely massive and instrumental in allowing libertarians to go, no, I have no problem supporting that Republican candidate because I align with them on most things.
Well, here's my diatribe. Okay, I don't believe in party loyalty at all. Republicans get mad at me, libertarians get mad at me, but I
Understood.
just I think a party is a vehicle, right? A party is a vehicle to advance an idea. 2018, I spoke at the Libertarian National Convention. Let me say it one more
Nice.
time. 2018, I spoke there,
That's
and I
awesome.
actually endorsed some libertarian candidates for state house and state senate.
Yeah.
And I tell a lot of people when I used to run Young Americans for Liberty, I had a rule which was, and I have the same rule now. As long as you're principled and viable, I don't care what party you're a part of. If you're a
Nope.
Democrat who believes in the Constitution and you're actually going to fight for it, I would support you. I would send door knockers to your district. I would raise the money and actually help you.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I believe in the Constitution. I just believe in a little bit more of a welfare state than what maybe someone else people do. Because that's kind of what it is. Like the old school Democrat was, I still believe in the general principles of the Constitution and Bill of Rights. I just think we need a few more social safety nets than most others. And it's
right.
like,
And that
okay,
is no longer, they're
yeah.
not anti-war anymore. They're not pro-Fourth Amendment when it comes to privacy.
See, I'd love to
They're-
argue they never were, and it was a facade, and they were using them because if you know the history of Woodrow Wilson, but I'm not going to get into a history lesson.
right. And especially even on free speech. I mean, I think that's what really turned Elon was this
Yes.
idea of like, what is going on? Like you guys, what is misinformation? Who gets to decide what hate speech is? Right. So I've always had that rule. And by the way, I'm going to brag here. Let me boast a little bit.
Go for it. You deserve, honestly, you should have been bragging more. You deserve
I
it.
have I have raised and spent more money on libertarians at the state level than any other entity in the world. Okay. Let me say this one more time. Let me make sure it's clear. I have endorsed four, I think five total. Maybe the one was an independent, but I have endorsed four libertarians. I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to get them elected. And I actually succeeded. We succeeded in Wyoming. We got a libertarian elected, Marshall Burt. He was in a Trump district. There was no Republican running, right? So
Mhm.
crazy good coincidence. But we got him across the finish line by knocking tens of thousands of doors to
Yeah.
help him. But I tell people like, you have to have a strategy,
Yeah.
right? So this is, I'm not preaching, but principled and viable are the two things I always think are the most important. When I look at any campaign, whether it's president or dog catcher, right? Or anywhere in between, principled and viable.
Yep.
And the other thing that a lot of Libertarian Party members don't understand, people like to win.
Yes.
And when I say they love to win and they hate losing so much because when you lose, the energy's gone, right? And if you're a loser, Roger Stone always says, losers don't legislate." And I'll give you an example. 2016, Justin Grice, my business partner, he was running Rand's whole field operation for his Senate reelect.
Yep.
And we brought in about 100, maybe 150 people. We called it Rand Slide. It was a volunteer effort. We
It's a
brought
great
people
name.
in, we put them in hotels, we fed them. And on election night, this is like a red state, right? Rand's supposed to win by like at least 8 points. I think he won by 12 or 14 points. It was a great night. This is the night, obviously, Trump won the White House.
Yep.
But I looked around the room at these 150 volunteers that we had. And Alex, just the excitement, right? The momentum and everybody, Cliff, what's next? We'll do anything for the cause, right? When you win, there's a certain euphoria. And I've learned that like you have to pick winning battles because if you lose, your volunteer base, your activists, all of the momentum is gone. And that's why, like, when I look at some of these emails I get from Libertarian Party, and it's like, they're still trying to like keep this like facade of positive energy. And it's like, Chase Oliver, cut me a break, man.
And it's like, what are you selling, right? As like the Libertarian Party. And for me, like, I think it's crazy. Libertarians, I think, need to take a like decade or two hiatus on federal anything because libertarians and the libertarian message should and can dominate local and state because that's exactly where your wheelhouse is. And I think where a lot of people lose is when you get to the federal is a lot of the foreign policy stuff, right? Because some of the foreign policy stuff is you'll have more people looking going, No, there's reasons why we do want to go to war because a lot of people grew up that way. But in terms of state, I'm not deciding war and foreign policy in a state level. I'm not deciding any of that in your local levels. there's no reason why libertarians don't dominate and should focus there, because if that groundswell happens, it's a natural osmosis where they're like, well, my town runs great. The people in the state house are awesome. Maybe I'll give that federal person a try and really get behind them. Like, the viable third party is there if they just stop reaching for the stars. And I think your point earlier about candidates going, want to get elected, want to get reelected, want to move higher, is kind of the driving force to tell a person with ambition, we need you to start off small, even though we know you have the charisma, the moxie to be bigger, but your better chances here. Like, it's hard to sell that, right?
Well, this is why I target state level races, okay? Because door knocking, you can make enough of a difference. Now, listen, if you're doing a federal race like we did with Trump, obviously, like you got to raise $3 million and spend it on one specific state, et cetera.
Yeah.
But when you get involved at the state level, okay, when you get into and every state's different. New Hampshire, you spend $500, you might win. In Texas, you need to spend $1 million for. In California, they spend more money for state house than some congressional races, right? So every state's a little different. But I tell people, my advice to the Libertarian National Convention or Committee in 2016, which nobody took it, unfortunately. I said, listen, why don't you guys? I'm with you, Alex. Why don't you not do federal races?
Yeah.
Just focus, pick one state house race and put all of your resources into it, put all of your energy into it, put everything you have and try to make a difference there. And the fear is these folks don't want to do it because then what happens if you lose? Well, if you lose, you should probably pack it in. But if I was running the America First Party or the Constitutional Party or the Libertarian Party, that would be what I would say. I would say, let's put all of our resources into trying to flip one state house district, get somebody on the board that represents our party, and actually, try to build from there. Because winning, when you win, you legislate. When you lose, you don't.
It drives me
It's
crazy
so simple.
because I interviewed years ago now. I had a little bit of a different show, but I interviewed Larry Sharp. And Larry Sharp, for all intents and purposes, would have been one of the history's greatest governors in New York, because he is
I love Larry. Great
he's
man.
so intelligent and he's a realist, right? He said, he's like, I am a libertarian, but I live in the real world. Like, I understand real world issues as a libertarian. And the Sharp Way is still a fantastic show. He's awesome. Larry's great for anyone that wants to go and listen to another reasonable, awesome libertarian. But that was the thing where he barely got any support from the party to run in that race. And it's like, you have guys like him that he should be a rock star in the Libertarian Party. People should want to support him because he's a guy with the charisma. People like Larry. When you meet him, you like him. So it's like, we can rant about the Libertarian Party because I think, like, I am a defender of the two-party system because I look around the world and I just see how messy all the percentages are and how they have to coalesce into two parties anyway when they want to form a government, right? We just kind of force that. But if there is a viability for a third party, the libertarians are it, and they just need to get their shit together. And it's like, that's the biggest ask. And will it ever happen? Probably not. But it's like, but their support was massive. So I really love what they did there. And I love what you did for Pennsylvania. So, Cliff, I appreciate you jumping on, man.
Anytime. Look, I'll be back. If you guys are doing nightly shows, you'll probably catch me in between travels here. I'm going to be back in PA pretty much, just getting our whole team together, figuring out where we go next. But Alex, appreciate you guys always spreading truth.
Yeah,
great platform, great show. Folks should subscribe on every platform you're on. It's an exciting time to be alive, man. We got a lot of things happening right now.
Yeah.
And as much as people get depressed, enjoy it. We've got opportunity. We've got great things ahead. And I think we're just getting started.
Yeah. And I've been telling everyone, my new message is don't let up. Don't let up. Just because we won now, there's an election every single year. Find out what it is. Support that candidate. Get on the ground. Volunteer. Join your committees. Don't let up. And that's what it is. And guys like you kind of, it's easy when I say it, but seeing someone like you who does it, who lives it, kind of, I think, sends that message more. So once again, he's Cliff Maloney, CEO of Citizen Alliance, founder of the Pennsylvania Chase, and I think he's just getting started. 33 years young. I think that we're going to be talking to you eventually as a candidate. I think one of these days, because you've done the groundwork, you obviously aren't afraid of speaking, and you know your shit. Maybe you could be that libertarian that they get behind. Maybe we can convince them to do that. But once again, if you want to go and support him, at Maloney on X, I'll throw that on there, and at the PA Chase on X if you want to support Pennsylvania Chase. You can find us everywhere at the Alex Cuesta Show. Do your due diligence wherever you are. X, follow, all that good stuff. Smash the like button. If you're listening on podcast form, give us a good review. If you don't give us a good review and it's anything less than 5 stars, I will send Cliff after you and he will knock on your door every night for at least a month straight. And quite literally, when you answer, he'll say hi and walk away. That will be the campaign. It'll just be called the high torture. Okay. So definitely only 5 stars. All right, everyone. We appreciate you watching. Well, I might be back in like 10 minutes to come do a little overtime show,